Step back in time to a world torn by war, but bound by brotherhood. In this powerful visual journey, we bring you rare, real faces of Confederate soldiers, restored and colorized with stunning clarity. Each portrait tells a story of honor, of hardship, of history. Through cutting-edge technology and meticulous care, these long-lost images come to life, bridging the past and present in a way that words alone cannot. Witness the Civil War South as you've never seen it before. These are not just photographs. These are timeless soldiers of the South. Junior Second Lieutenant Theophilus S Lucky, Company B, 6th Florida Infantry. Lucky enlisted on March 12, 1862 in Quincy as a first sergeant, later becoming Junior Second Lieutenant. He was captured on December 16, 1864 near Nashville, Tennessee, and was held as a POW until June 1865. 6th Florida Infantry Private Angus McKay Nicholson with wife Sally, sons Walter and Malcolm. Private Edward Dempsey, Company E, 7th Louisiana Infantry. Dempsey, a 20-year-old single Cooper born in New Orleans, enlisted on June 7, 1861 at Camp Moore, Louisiana. He deserted in 1863, but then returned on his own accord. His post-war fate is unknown. Captain John Witherspoon LaBousse, Company H, 13th Louisiana Infantry. LaBousse enlisted as a first lieutenant and later became captain. He is listed in several different companies due to organizational issues. He served for a long time on detached service. He was captured at the end of the war on May 8, 1865 in Athens, Georgia. Private Joseph Desire Camille Bourgeois, Company A, Ogden's Louisiana Cavalry. Bourgeois was captured near Cington, Louisiana in November 1864, ending the war for him. He died in 1874 and is buried in Ascension Parish, Louisiana. First Lieutenant Elijah Pierce Horn, Company H, 1st Georgia Infantry Regulars. Horn, a resident of Georgia, was working on the Vicksburg and Shreveport Railroad as a civil engineer when the war began. He first enlisted in Company A, 4th Louisiana Infantry Battalion, but was discharged for unknown reasons and without the knowledge of his captain, according to records. Horn then enlisted in the 1st Georgia Regulars as a second lieutenant on November 25, 1861, and was later appointed first lieutenant. He was wounded on July 1, 1862 at the Battle of Malvern Hill. He continued to serve and was paroled in Augusta, Georgia in 1865. In 1903, he traveled to New Hampshire for health reasons, but contracted a cold and then pneumonia. He is buried in Dalton, Whitfield County, Georgia. Colonel Isaac Williams Patton, 21st Louisiana Infantry. Isaac is the great-uncle of General George Patton. Patton was elected captain of the Scrummen's Guards, Company F of the 21st on December 31st, 1861, and later became colonel commanding the regiment in May 1862. He had served as AQM, and in April 1862, he declined the position of major of the 23rd Louisiana Infantry. He became a POW when Vicksburg capitulated to federal troops in July 1863, but was soon paroled. He had been seriously wounded on May 20th at Vicksburg and never fully recovered from those wounds. He continued to serve and was paroled at the end of the war in 1865. More of his story can be found on his Fin de Grave page. Patton died in 1890 and is buried in New Orleans. Corporal White Turpin, Company B and Company C, Crescent Regiment Louisiana Infantry. Turpin enlisted as a private on March 5, 1862 in New Orleans and later became corporal. He served for some time on detached duty in the Ordnance and Quartermaster departments. He was wounded at the Battle of Mansfield on April 8, 1864. Turpin survived the war, but not by long. He died in 1869. Private Henry Clay Henry, musician, Independent Rangers, Company E, 12th Louisiana Infantry. Henry enlisted on August 18, 1861 at Camp Moore. He became a POW when Vicksburg capitulated to federal forces in July 1863, but was soon paroled. He served until the end and surrendered in North Carolina in 1865. Captain William Frederick Ogden, Company K, 7th Louisiana Infantry. Ogden, a 20-year-old single lawyer, enlisted at Camp Moore as a second sergeant in June 1861 into the Crescent Rifles, Company H, and eventually became the captain of the Livingston Rifles, which was Company K. He was captured on November 7, 1863 at Rappahannock Station and was held as a POW until June 1865. Second Sergeant James W. Nicholson, Claiborne Rangers, Company L, 12th Louisiana Infantry. Nicholson enlisted on August 13, 1861 at Camp Moore, Louisiana, enlisting as a private. He eventually became a commissary sergeant and was later detailed as a musician, in which role he remained for the remainder of the war. He was paroled in North Carolina in 1865. For many Confederate images, the names of the men in the images have been lost to history. Some, however, leave clues, but it is still hard to make a solid ID. Written in the case behind this image is Mr. F.M. Chamblas, Mansfield, Louisiana. The image is purported to be Private Littleton M. Chamblas, North Louisiana Cadets, Company A, 12th Louisiana Infantry. He was killed at the Battle of Peachtree Creek in July 1864 in Atlanta, Georgia. Littleton was a son of F.M. Chamblas. Cole K, 12th Louisiana Infantry, CPL James Monroe Cole, and wife Alex, CA 1917. 12th Lionel, Buford's Brigade, Army of the Tennessee. Captured near Jackson, Mississippi, July 1863. POW Camp Morton, IN, until May 1865. Seated with wife Alcy Cole. Photo taken near Hemphill, Texas, about 1917. Note, his UDC medal on vest. Corporal Covington Hardy Bernett, Minden Blues, Company G, 8th Louisiana Infantry. Bernett enlisted on June 23, 1861 at Camp Moore. He was wounded on August 27, 1862 at Bristow Station, Virginia. He became a POW in November 1863, but was soon paroled. He was wounded yet again on July 9, 1864 at the Battle of Monocacy. He was killed on September 19, 1864 at the Battle of Third Winchester. Private Dennis Priier White, 2nd Company, Washington Artillery of New Orleans. White first enlisted in Company A, 7th Louisiana Infantry Battalion. He enlisted as a 5th Sergeant on April 22, 1861 in New Orleans, and was later became a 2nd Lieutenant. He enlisted to serve for duration of the siege of Fort Pickens. He then enlisted in the Washington Artillery on June 3, 1863 in Mobile, Alabama. He was wounded, suffering a flesh wound to the right arm, on July 6, 1863 at Williamsport, Maryland. White survived the war, died in 1889 in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and is buried there. 2nd Lieutenant John McKinley Gibson, Company A, 13th Louisiana Infantry. John was the brother of Confederate General Randall E. Gibson. His records are extremely limited. In 1864, he served as acting ADC in Gibson's brigade, and he was absent sick several times during his service. His father, Tobias Gibson Sr., was one of the leading cotton and sugar planters in the Mississippi Valley, but he lived in Kentucky. John Gibson died in 1880 and is buried in Lexington, Kentucky. Private Jules Desire Leblanc, Attakapas Guards, Company C, 8th Louisiana Infantry. Leblanc enlisted on July 19, 1861 at Camp Moore, Louisiana. As with most soldiers, he suffered several absences due to illness during his service. He was wounded on June 28, 1862 during the 7 Days Battles. He was captured on November 7, 1863 near the Rappahannock in Virginia, but later exchanged. He was wounded and captured on July 9, 1864 at the Battle of Monocacy, Virginia. Paroled in February 1865, he served until the end and was surrendered at Appomattox in April 1865. Leblanc died in 1905 and is buried in Iberia Parish, Louisiana. Private John Wesley Greer, Company C, 19th Louisiana Infantry. Greer enlisted on December 11, 1861 at Camp Moore. He was slightly wounded in the knee on April 6, 1862 at the Battle of Shiloh. He was wounded yet again in July 1864 during the Atlanta Campaign. Greer survived the war, died in 1902, and is buried in Sabine Parish, Louisiana. Lieutenant Colonel David Zabul, 14th Louisiana Infantry. Zabul, a 29-year-old single clerk, enlisted as a captain of Company K, 14th Louisiana Infantry on June 12, 1861 in New Orleans. He rose through the ranks. He was wounded in the thigh on September 17, 1862 at the Battle of Sharpsburg. He was present from Chancellorsville through the Wilderness, but was absent sick from May until June 1864. He was then basically present for the remainder of the war. Zabul died in 1906 and is buried in New Orleans. Colonel Richard Jones, 14th Louisiana Infantry. Jones, a 40-year-old Virginia-born married physician, served during the Mexican War as the captain of Company F, 1st Alabama Infantry. Jones had been a cadet at West Point for 2 years. He enlisted as a captain of the Tiger Bayou Rifles, Company I, 14th Louisiana Infantry on June 1st, 1861, and rose through the ranks. He resigned his commission on August 15, 1862. If you enjoyed this tribute to the past, like, share, and subscribe for more colorized windows into history. Let these faces be remembered, not forgotten. Thank you for watching.